What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Hey, I'm Amy Chang. I'm a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, and this is Healthy AF. In this podcast, I'll be bringing you all things health, from the newest health strategies to how to tackle those personal roadblocks that just will not let you move forward. So buckle in. We're going to be inspired and instructed, and dadgum, we're going to have a little fun on Healthy AF. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Healthy AF. I'm so excited because I have a guest today, and I love having friends. I mean, it is Healthy AF, which is Amy and friends, and I have a friend today. So my friend today is Tracey O'Neill, and I'm delighted to hear more about really the passion she has and for the good things that she's bringing into the world, and to share that on this podcast. So welcome, Tracey.
Oh, thanks so much, Amy. It's great to be here. And yes, I love being friends. So love the podcast, Healthy AF, guys. Yes. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
So just to talk a little bit about, I met Amy when I decided to take a vision, an idea that I didn't for 10 years that I absolutely was pushing aside, not to do, but was encouraged to take Little Voices of Truth, my idea, into a nonprofit. And meeting Amy has been great in terms of helping me understand, just how to do this stuff. So thank you, Amy. And I'll tell you a bit about Little Voices of Truth. As I mentioned, it started really 10 years ago as an idea. And the little voices at first were supposed to be really in my heart, voices of children, right? That who need help, who've been through trauma. We've all been through something in our lives. We don't necessarily have to have childhood trauma, but we've all had trauma. And just the little tiny voices of truth of kids just trying to say, hey, something's going on, something's wrong, and having people believe them and support them. But then that grew because as I grew, honestly, I started doing some outreach. It wasn't like I set on a mission. It was just somebody popped up and said, I need help here or help here. And before I knew it, I was on the resiliency task force in our county.
You were on the slow that down. I'm a Southerner. You
Sorry.
were on the what task force?
So I live in New Hanover County in Wilmington, and we have a resiliency task force. And we were chosen of one of 3 counties initially in the state to be a resilient state. And I got on board with that and started learning, it's not just the little voices of children that need to be heard. It's everyone's voice. Because
so tell me what the resilient, can I pin it?
Sure. Absolutely.
Because I want to know, what is this resilient? You said we're a resilient county.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
Resilient task force.
Yep.
So what does a resilient task, what does that mean?
So what it means is the state of North Carolina, and this is probably 2019, maybe a bit earlier, was starting initiative through I think it was Duke, that had wanted to choose some communities to pilot resiliency, how you can become a resilient community. And it starts off as everyone in every space does, right? You have to raise awareness as to what it is. And how the approach was they broke up into several different committees. So, for example, you'd have a judicial committee, you would have a community, faith, family committee, you would have an education committee. So all the committees that would make up what our community would look like, right? What any community would need. And so in those subcommittees, you would meet and find ways to raise awareness on what resiliency is, how do you become resilient, etc. So one of the things that we did was we showed the resilience documentary, which is incredible if anyone hasn't seen it.
We can put that link in the show notes.
Yep, it's a great documentary, and we would show that, and then we would discuss it and go through what does it mean for someone to be resilient? What are the effects of trauma? What does a resilient community look like? A community that supports, a community that bounces back. In fact, New Hanover County changed it from the New Hanover County Resiliency Task Force to New Hanover County Bounces Back. How do we support each other in bouncing back? What does that look like in an education? What does that look like in a judicial system? In fact, So most of our legal proceedings in New Hanover County, they do see this screening of resilience as part of their program in the judicial system. So making those initiatives and raising awareness that just because you're going through something, and in New Hanover County, right, we have hurricanes and we have to bounce back. And that's really kind of what we did. And I sat on the Faith Family Community Task Force and learned, truly how important it is. Not like the little voices are not just the little voices of our children, they're all the little voices inside of us. And that if we as adults don't understand our truth and what has happened to us and how we get out of it, we can't help our kids.
Mm.
So that really started Little Voices of Truth. But the Resiliency Task Force, like I said, I can't, and I know it kept expanding. I can't say enough good things of just having been identified as one of those counties and being a part of that initiative. I also became a guardian ad litem. So I worked with, I was a court-appointed spokesperson for children who have been removed from their homes due to abuse and neglect. And we really got to see hands-on, what is going on? What are these voices? And I was actually, as a guardian ad litem, you are a voice of a child, to speak to the court about what their needs and desires are in that process. And it was great. Became a trainer with that as well. And then went into, I couldn't believe it that I got the position, but North Carolina Prevent Child Abuse was looking for a role in bringing out prevention in our faith communities across the state. So I was able to do that. And all of this during COVID, a time where people really needed support, resources, tools, and how to best navigate that entire situation.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah.
And so all that led you to here and establishing a nonprofit called Little Voices of
Little
Truth.
Voices of Truth. Yeah. And the main premise of it is this, not like, again, we all experience trauma. So one thing to identify with trauma is this: there is normal, I guess, trauma that happens to all of us. For example, a hurricane, a natural disaster, right?
Yeah.
And that's a traumatic event, right? And we need supports, tools, resources to get through that. But there's something also called complex trauma. And complex trauma is when that traumatic event goes over time and it continues. And there's not really an end in sight to that trauma. So you can think of children being abused. You can think of domestic violence. If you're in a situation, a traumatic situation that is ongoing. And that's really, really hard for us as humans to get through. And part of it is not because you don't want to get through it. A lot of people want to say that, like, right? Like, come on, you could just get through it. Go to a therapist. You're going to be fine.
Yep.
Like, just go.
Mm-mm.
The truth of the matter is this trauma, especially complex trauma, rewires our brains. It's a biological response now. And it's not so much something that you can will yourself out of. It's more, you need those supports. And science shows that it takes just one caring, supportive person in your life, for a child, typically an adult, to heal those traumas. And in fact, they've shown that it can actually eradicate the effects of the trauma if you have that strong connection and support system. So that's the biggest thing. But we can stay stuck in our trauma. And oftentimes it's because it's just a biological response. Our neural pathway has been trained to go to that space. And having those caring, supportive adults help us rewire those pathways, which is what you have to do. It's like almost trying a whole new, as you do, healthy program, right? Like you have to, if you want to change how you look, how you feel, how your body acts, you have to change your eating habits and your exercise habits. And it's not easy because we have been in a pattern and you have to change that. And the same is true with trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. I find a lot of times when I work with people, it's both. And I think I did a podcast on this a little while back. It's both. You have to change your actions to rewire your brain, and also you need to rewire your brain to change your actions. And
It's
some
hard.
people are yes, and some people do it well. Like we're doing both at the same time. Some people really need those actions first to generate the confidence and the trust that now their brain can let go of like whatever they've put up with and kept themselves safe with. Sometimes we got to like dig through shame, defeat, hopelessness before we have any energy to take an action. And so it's really from what I've seen with my people and myself, it's kind of a balancing act of the rewire, and it's not done alone.
Absolutely. You can't.
It's not done alone. Yeah.
No, the science even supports that, and from a faith perspective as well, like we need each other. And it's hard because, especially as you've talked about, you go through this trauma, it's hard to trust.
Oh, yeah. Trust
And
yourself,
so
much less
trust
trust
yourself.
anything else
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And trust others. But you're absolutely right. Like I am so much better if I do exercise with somebody, or I'm held accountable if you get a trainer or something like that, right? Like I was just thinking this the other day. This is so off topic, but it
There's
just
no
came into my head.
topic here at Healthy AF, by the way. We can go everywhere we want to go.
So I don't want to
We'll
be
see.
offensive to anyone who may not be of a faith based, but I just really felt God put in my heart, like, why do you keep promises to everyone else but not to yourself?
Mm.
Why is it like you could say, hey, listen, I will be there for you. Okay, you need me here at 6:00 if my kids, right? You need me to be at your sporting event. Gotcha. I'm there and I'm not late and I'm ready and I'm prepared. But if I say I want to work out and I'm like, you know what, just I'm not feeling it, whatever. And I just don't keep my own promises to myself. And part of it, like I've been through a lot of trauma myself, actually my entire life. And, I just really heard that little voice inside me saying, you just don't value yourself enough to hold a promise. You value so many others over yourself. And that, when we talk about little voices of truth, that's really is the premise that everybody is precious, honored, and deeply, deeply loved.
Mm.
And if we could just sit in that truth and realize that truth, all the other stuff starts to work its way out.
It does.
But the world, the people, trauma, situations, disasters tell us so much differently, right? All the time. We always hear how we're just not enough. We could be doing more. We could be doing better. We can this, we can that, instead of just saying, you know what, I am precious, honored, and I am loved. And that's all I need to know to get through my day.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, I would love it if you could say that again, slow and loud for the people in the back.
Yes, your inherent truth is that you're precious, honored, and very deeply loved.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can hold on to that truth, if I say that, me too,
Mm-hmm.
everything else works itself out.
Shakes out.
The other truths don't matter. The trauma starts to dissipate. The hold it has on you starts to go away. Mm-hmm. And in fact, what happens, what Little Voices of Truth wants to do is encourage people to, as they work through their trauma, help others work through their trauma, to create a legacy of that truth for generations to come. And by doing that, just even in yourself, by helping one little person or listening to someone, believing somebody, changing the narrative. Like when someone's going through something, oh, you're weak, or no, that didn't really happen to you. Are you sure? Oh God, girl, you need therapy. Instead of
which may be true, but probably not helpful as a response. Damn,
well,
lady,
I think
you need some therapy.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so I'll go. I hope you don't mind. I can talk forever. I'll go into the story. I hope this gentleman is watching. So I was at the gym, and I had seen this fella who had lost his leg, and he'd been in there all the time. And let me tell you, he is fit, 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 fit. And I kept looking. It's like my mom herself had lost her leg, so I was intrigued, but I don't want to say anything because they know what that's like. Everyone asks you about it. So let's just say I've been seeing him for a year, back and forth, smiling. Hey, how are you? And I just happened to be with another person, and he's came in and started talking with us. And I finally asked him, I said, hey, what happened, to you? And he was like, well, and I explained to him about my mom. I'm not trying to be rude or whatever. And he was like, the only way that I tell people what happened to me is you have to see a picture. Well, of course, he was in a motorcycle accident. It was not a pretty picture. And we had a conversation, right, of all the things that happened to him, and all the steps of people that had to be there to help him rehabilitate and to get to the place he is today. And so after he was talking about this, which was phenomenal, right? What a just inspiration. He looked at me and he was like, well, tell me your story. And so I told him my story. And as I've said, I've come from a pretty horrific past. And, but mine wasn't physical. Well, to a certain degree. And he looked at me and he goes, are you getting help? Are you okay? And at first I was like, help? I am okay. But then I'm like, am I okay? But that triggered me to understand, maybe not speed triggered word, inspired me to what the goal really is of Little Voices of Truth. And that is to hopefully one day get unseen trauma centers so we're going back to that mental health. Yes, mental health is extremely important. I am not at all saying you don't need therapy, you don't need resources, you don't need people, community, you need all of those things. But you also need a multidisciplinary approach to your wounds, just as someone does a physical wound, right? So for people who've experienced traumatic situations, oftentimes they need legal help, they need financial help, they need medical help, they need mental health help, faith, holistic healing help, pediatric help. How are you going to, if you have children, how are you going to work with them with that? So it's like a holistic care approach, just as you would with a seen trauma as an unseen trauma. So just having that gentleman in my life put that understanding in my heart that this is what we need. We need that same kind of care as if you broke your arm, right? Like you need to go to the ER, you broke your arm, you got your doctors, go to the orthopedic surgeon, rehab, physical therapy. The same happens for people who are going through trauma. They need all of those supports too, not just one.
So was that your aha moment?
It was.
Yeah.
It was for that. For like, I always knew that I wanted to change some policies, especially in reporting, encouraging people. And I know why people don't report.
Okay, now
It's
we're not talking
amazing.
about news journalism reporting. We're talking about
No.
reporting, like to the police, reporting
Yes.
trauma,
Yes.
reporting crime. Okay.
Thank you. Yep. And the reason that's so huge for me with Little Voices of Truth is the first step that has to happen. And it's why it's called Little Voices of Truth. And I don't use the word stories and I don't use the word victim. Because when you say the word story and someone's gone through a traumatic event, that leads itself to, is it fiction or nonfiction, right? And one of the hardest things of someone going through trauma is getting people to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's unbelievable. You find yourself trying to get someone to believe, like, this really did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost re-traumatizing, right? When you share it, because you're constantly in this defensive of like, no, this really happened. Or then you start thinking to yourself, did it really happen? Like, yeah, they're so convincing. So it's changing the narrative. But the reason you want to change the narrative is because, well, at least child abuse, neglect, domestic violence, human sex trafficking. I mean, you talk about some of the really hard things that people go through. It's not reported. For example, a child sexual abuser has on average 9 victims. And it's probably the most underreported event. So you've got 9 victims to 1 abuser, which I don't like the word victim. I'm sorry. We're going to have to find another word for that, because the only reason I don't like it is that word makes it look like you're powerless. It gives that implication that you're a victim, right? And that's absolutely not the truth. But that's all those numbers, and they're silenced. And being silenced, sadly, allows that, if you take 1, to do more and more and more. And if we don't report it, we can never stop it. In fact, those who have been in that situation, right, they are actually in a group of numbers. And I just really want us to have a society and a community that we can actually, and our kids, most importantly, can feel safe reporting and supported.
Is that the barrier for reporting? Is that okay, so what I see from my own life and others, as a young woman, I I guess if you said on paper, hey, if your boyfriend pushes you, that's not okay, I'd probably be like, oh, yeah. But in real life, when my boyfriend pushed me, I just took it.
Mhm.
And I didn't think anything about it. In fact, it took me until I was in my late 30s to realize what was actually happening in that relationship at 15. And then I was so just grief stricken at what little Amy had been through, and not even realize. I mean, like, it wasn't that I put up with it, it was that I didn't notice it. So, so I'm wondering, where are the barriers? I feel like they're probably everywhere when it comes to what does actually get reported.
Well, that in itself, you just said it doesn't have to be child sexual abuse. I think it goes on, and you come up with a very good point on that too. And one of the barriers is oftentimes we don't remember. I mean, science does show, right? You don't remember to your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond a lot of these traumatic events that have happened to you. And once you finally remember it, right, it's the statute of limitations are over, all of these things. So again, you're there to sit and you're there to sit and have to work it out on your
Yeah.
own with no type of justice or what have you to move that forward. So that's part of it, is our memory and our minds don't want to remember, that stuff that happened to us. I think it's normalized too. We keep normalizing poor treatment of one another. And well, it was just a little push. He didn't mean anything
Yeah.
about, it's not a big deal.
It has been
And
interesting when that came up for me. I did a little like looking around to see, what, because I don't remember things really well anyway. That's my characteristic. I've got a best friend who remembers everything from high school. Like, remember that time and we went down at Creedmoor and there was beer, and then I'm like, no, I don't remember that. So I called her right away and I'm like, you know what just popped in my head? And she shared her memories because she was with me one day that he pushed me and my head went back and hit the top of his car. And she says she remembers the sound of my head
mm,
hitting the roof of his car. And in talking about it, I was able to say, like, oh my God, I remember we were at this shopping center and we were getting those little screw in cleaty things for his golf shoes. And I remembered that so clearly. And then there was another conversation that I wasn't around for, where another friend that went to high school with us said, yeah, I remember the day he pushed her into some lockers. So, when we have a community who witnesses, they were silent too. Not like in a blamey way, but like there's
no.
so many levels of, we don't know what to do with it, or maybe I don't know where is that barrier.
Well, I think there's tons of barriers. I think one of them too that I would love is, I think children and youth should be able, everybody has a phone, they should all report if they find it. And I think it needs to be anonymous. I think
Mm.
part of the thing is people don't want to, say, hey, this happened to me. But I think if we had a database, or it would be my hope that if we had a database, a nationwide database of all types, if you call and you place even if it's anonymous with this person, over time, like I said, average abuser had 7 victims or 9 victims. You're going to find that name is probably going to keep popping up over and over and over again
Mm.
if you allow that to happen. And then investigations could take place, instead of putting the onus and the responsibility on the person who's trying to heal and move forward, or even your friends, like to come out and do that. It's a hard thing, because again, the one who's
Yeah.
reporting it is the one who's under scrutiny, not necessarily the one who actually is accused of doing what they did.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so that's what, that's again changing the narrative and being like, listen, we're not here to punish. It's not my job to get justice. to someone who has done harm, but it is my job to stop the harm being done to me and hopefully stop the harm and it happening to others.
Yeah.
And we can't do that in silence.
I'll tell you the other thing that really sat on me when I was, late 30s and realized what had happened is I think that pattern continued for that person. And I thought to myself, if I'd just said something, he might have gotten help. And that pattern might not have happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's even a more beautiful point, not just,
Yeah.
that they, there's a reason they're doing what they're doing as well. And help needs to be had in that situation too. But I think the first and foremost is keep themselves and others safe. I think that's extremely important. And we need to take that in mind when we talk to people. Right. And I think the sad thing is, Amy, even us talking, this is what happens when you have conversation. If someone shares their heart, it always happens, no matter what room I've been in, no matter whenever I've had the courage to share, which is so hard, other people get that courage too.
Yeah, it gives them permission.
And I've never been in a room where not one person has said, golly, I haven't been through anything.
No.
It's almost, it has always been, oh my gosh, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak my truth as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think for me, I would really love to see, I don't see anything in all the nonprofits and the things that I've been through where people are really, truly encouraging reporting. And reporting in a way that you're not putting the onus on the person who is the one who's trying to heal.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a tough spot. And I've heard a lot of people, and in fact, my kids have had friends who have, I will not say were victims, but I will say were victimized. And they chose not to report. And then for my kids, they're left with knowing that it's hard.
It's really hard.
And there's a reason why people don't report, and sometimes
there is
it's fear and sometimes it's healing and,
oftentimes, again, I think if we can change the narrative and have support for people so that they can report and make it more acceptable and less, I don't know, like looking at someone like they're crazy or something's wrong with them because it's happened to them. Because that's another thing. You're like, oh, how could you let this happen to you? How could you? Da, 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 da. And like you said, half the time, or I would probably say 99% of the time, most people don't even realize, honestly, they know it's wrong. They know looking at someone else and be like,
yeah.
Like if that was happening to your friend, you'd be like, what are you doing?
But
happening to you, you're like,
get in the car. I have matches.
Like what was that with promises to ourselves? Like I could defend anybody, but what is it that in my own mind that says I can't or I'm not good enough to do that, I'm not worthy enough to say it. And I hope it's okay I share this. I don't like to share a lot of my life, but I was abused. I was adopted. And that was what was held over my head was, I wouldn't have a home. I wouldn't have my mother, my sister, my brother. I wouldn't have this. And so when that abuse went to my best friend that would stay with me for weekends over time, and typically when a person has been abused, they're abused by multiple people over time. It's almost like, I don't know why that is, but it is. And she had incurred a lot of other abuses and had 2 suicide attempts, and the last one leaving her permanently brain injured. And it is why it is so important to me that we understand collectively we are very strong. Our voices are very strong, and not speaking up does really cost. And how do we change that?
So Tracey, something that's just occurred to me, we've talked several times and I've heard little voices of truth and I've been like, now what is that? And something that you just said, I wonder, and I see this in my people too and in myself, I mean, the reason I have this podcast is so I can share where I've been, and somebody can, at worst, feel heard, and at best, feel hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if Little Voices of Truth is a place where people can practice saying it. And the more we can practice saying it, the more reporting becomes less stigmatized, less, of a uphill battle. It's just like we say it and
Right.
practicing saying it. So I wondered if you could comment on that. And then I would really like to hear more for our listeners. What does Little Voices of Truth do? What is its mission? What, all that stuff. So first, if you'll answer, like, what do you think about that whole, like, we need to practice saying this stuff out loud to each other, and then tell us all about Little Voices of Truth. That'd be great.
Absolutely. I mean, just like you said, if you practice saying what we've said to each other, the one thing I want to make sure is we don't want to remain stuck. I've been stuck my entire life. I don't want to be stuck. We can take trauma and just make it into and keep going and living in that space. And that's why your main truth is that you're precious, honored, and deeply loved. And if you go past that and get stuck into that, you're saying you're something that other than that, what other people have told you, what has happened to you, then that's just so hard. But Little Voice of Truth, like what you said, when you practice saying that, you're creating a legacy for yourself and you're creating a legacy for others because you're giving them the option and the opportunity to live a life. We cannot change any type of policy if we don't know what's happening, and we don't know what's happening because people aren't saying what's happening. And you can't do anything without having those numbers. You can't find that support, and you can't make effective change.
And
It
you're
just won't
talking
happen.
policy, like governmental policy,
Absolutely.
laws,
Absolutely. Like
regulations,
trauma centers. Yes. Getting trauma centers, getting people
funding.
with direct. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We have to be able to, because not everybody has financial means or those support systems. I mean, in fact, that's what the term toxic stress comes from, is that stress that you're under with nobody there to help you. That's considered toxic stress. And not everybody has a support system. In fact, quite honestly, my therapist said I had the worst inner circle of anyone she ever met. And I was like, well, dang. And she was about to retire. So I was like, wow, dang, super dang. That's really saying something. But the fact of the matter is some of us don't have that. And I want people to know at Little Voices of Truth, you are not alone. That's pretty, you are precious, honored, loved, and you are not alone. Absolutely. And you are not defined by what happened to you. You have so much more ahead of you. I mean, just look at what you've done, right? We all have such a purpose and a life and a legacy to leave.
Yeah.
But it starts within us and knowing who we really are. So yes, I think it is a great place. We're going to, definitely offer resources and ways to do that. Our first campaign, which we're trying to iron out right now, is Truths, Not Stories. And really talking to people about, hey, listen, this really is my truth. I'm not lying to you. I don't want to feel shamed when I share you. So we'll have resources about like truth and how you share your truth when you're going through stuff. Because oftentimes when I'd share my truth, I was a complete, utter emotional mess. Nothing was making sense, and I'm sharing it, and I don't sound, I would even say coherent, because I'm just spilling all of this out, right? And the person receiving it is like, oh my gosh, what is happening? How do I respond to this? And so it's both. So ways to share and make sure that you are taking care of yourself as you're sharing, and also ways to receive when someone is sharing what has happened to them. And then how, again, to take it to the next step. And as they move forward in their progress, start saying, hey, would you want to share that with somebody? Would you want to report this? I'll go in there with you. If you feel like doing that, reporting is very traumatizing in of itself. So I don't want to encourage anybody to do anything that they are not capable of at that moment, or that will cause them more harm.
Yeah, that is so tough. Like at the beginning, just for different things in my life, like now I can tell you details of the day dad died and me sitting beside him and what I was singing to him and how that happened and what my body felt like and what his body looked like. But, 12 hours after daddy died, I would not have been able to get through that. And
Mhm.
I can't imagine going through a rape,
Mhm.
going through a physical, like getting beaten. I can't
Mhm.
imagine going through that and having to be a coherent truth teller in the first
Mhm.
12 hours or the first
Right.
24 hours. Now, I will say when my marriage ended, it ended very suddenly, and I was not expecting it. It was very traumatic. I think it was traumatic for all of us, him, me, the kids, everybody. And at that time, at 44, I had enough capacity to just know that there were things I needed to do. I needed to
Mhm.
call one of my best friends and get a private detective. I needed to call another best friend and get a lawyer, and I needed to change the locks. Like I just knew there were some things I had to do, and I was able to robot through that. But I surely would not have had those skills as a child. And I don't
Yeah.
believe I would have had those skills if that were um, a physical trauma.
Right.
I can't imagine.
So I'm glad you brought that up because part of Little Voice of Truth, again, we are just starting this, so it's not as, neat and together as I would hope it to be. But one of the arms of it is called Next Gen Truth. And it's for the next generation, right? Because they need their space and their ways of how to speak their truth, to know their truth. They use, different ways, different social medias, TikToks, things of that nature that maybe, my age group doesn't use as much. And that's part of it for exactly what you said, because they need to support each other as well, right? As you mentioned, like you and your former spouse. Well, so many go through that. So many children go through that, and they don't have a support
No,
system.
they don't.
And they are they're these next generations. They're incredible, and they're kind and
Mm.
smart,
Mm.
and if they could encourage and be there for each other, they could really create some lasting change and legacies. But they need the support and they need the belief. And I think, you're talking about that like you couldn't imagine within 12 hours, in that time frame having to report, right? Um, but then let's think about it. You're having to report and you're reporting to someone who doesn't believe you.
Yep.
And what did you do to bring it on?
Yep.
You obviously weren't dressed appropriately, or you didn't do this right, or you
Why were
must
you
have
out
said
at 2
something,
a.m.?
or you
I mean,
must have
never
said
mind
something to make
why your victimizer was out at 2 a.m. Why were you out at 2 a.m.? Why had
or
you been drinking? Why had why did you have on a G string? Why did you, all that? Yeah.
yeah, or what did you say to get them so upset that they had to hit you?
Yep.
And that's the part where we really have to change that. We've got to do better with that. And see people for people, right? And in the situation, like you said, and how dramatic it is. Because again, oftentimes when they're in that, there's a thing called reactive abuse, right? Like you're reacting to it and you almost look like you're not emotionally or mentally
Yeah,
together
I gotcha.
because
Been there.
you're in the midst of this, right?
Mhm.
And now someone's saying, did it really happen? Did you invite this on? And if we can't change it, it's just not, something has to change, I guess, is just what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It can't keep going like this because it won't. We have lots of policies, we have lots of care, we've got lots of programs, we have lots of nonprofits, um, but we need to make it better.
So in all that policy and care and nonprofits,
Hmm.
clearly you felt like there was a gap that
Hmm.
was not being um, looked at, handled, grown. And you
Mm-hmm.
created your nonprofit, Little Voices of Truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, that
What will
and,
that
you know,
fill? What will that,
okay,
what are you
so from
hoping
a
that that will
policy
fill?
perspective, yeah, from a policy perspective, pretty easily, like we want to encourage. Well, one is you got to change the stigma, and that's going to happen with policy, right? You need programs, you need DHS behind you in those types of things, social posters, texts, etc.
Like
We
public
need
service
to bring,
announcement kind of thing?
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Keep your brain
yes,
on
and
drugs. You know, this is,
yes,
yeah. Okay.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
something that can really start getting people to change the way that they're communicating about what happened to them and how they're receiving it. And, you know, we should not be, you're innocent until proven guilty, but also you should be believed until
Yeah.
proven otherwise. But yet, unfortunately, the ones that are going through the hardships are not the ones who are believed immediately. So the first is changing the narrative. And with changing the narrative, then of course comes into reporting. And what I'd really love to see is we don't have a centralized nationwide database for reporting. Different states do it differently. So, for example, in North Carolina, you have to call the Department of Health and Human Services of the county of which you're in to report. I mean, you can call the police, but then the police are going to do the same. So that's one thing that's very challenging. Again, we don't have statistical analysis data. We have some, but again, we're not reporting, and
Yep.
that causes a huge disconnect right there. So changing the stigma, then getting people to report. How do you get people to report? One, you make it anonymous. You open it to everybody. Anyone of any age should be able to report an abusive situation or traumatic situation, right? Like take it down. And then I just think we need a nationwide database of all calls, texts, whatever, to authorities about harm being done to them, and keep that database, whether it, like I said, whether it's sex trafficking, whether it's abuse, whether it's neglect, whether it's, domestic violence, whatever it is, have a database. You will see patterns, and then you'll be able to gauge what is needed to help.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, I really want to see those unseen trauma centers where someone, for example, say someone who's gone through domestic violence, right? They need legal help. They're probably going to have to get a restraining order. They don't have money 9 times out of 10, right?
Yep.
They're going to need financial assistance. How do I pay for these certain things, right? They're also going to need medical help to care for their wounds, a pediatrician to care for their children, mental health professional for their and their families' support, right? And then just a health and healing, in terms of where you come in too, like healthy and the encompassing of all health really is what I'm looking for in an unseen trauma center, right? Whether it's, if faith is not your thing, faith can be traumatic too. Don't, trust me, it's a big thing in my heart, but I also know it could be traumatizing to people. So even if it's not faith, then it's a wholeness center, right? Where you have meditation and yoga and activities to just help you breathe and relax. And again, that underlining truth, you're precious, honored, and deeply loved. All of this stuff that has happened isn't you. It's external of what's happened to you. And it's not, quote unquote, what you let happen to you either.
No. We just had I coach a group of women every other Tuesday, and it's fabulous. And last night, a couple nights ago, we wrote out all the things that kind of had made us the way we are now. And so the things in the past that we've made a decision about, like, oh, I can't be mad because if I'm mad, I get yelled at or whatever. Or, as long as I'm funny, people will like me, to the very best things, like when I overachieve, I do well. So, to be accepted, I need to overachieve all the time. All those things from the tiniest to, yeah, girl, all those things that we decided. And I was like, okay, all those things are your accessories. They are not you. And so we actually did an exercise where we drew out all our accessories I said, some of those accessories are the favorite earrings that you wear and you don't even feel them and they are great and you love them. They are still not you. That is not who
Mm-hmm.
you are. That is your accessory.
Mm-hmm.
And so we drew out our accessories and then I
I
said
love it.
to them, go put those in a different room. Go put them in a
Love it.
different room and come back. And now we're going to look at who we are without all that stuff because it's
Oh,
not
it's
who you are.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was a really fun
It's
time.
powerful. Mm-hmm.
And I've from everything I've read and from every person I've worked with, and clearly my love of the 12 steps, if you're not looking at spirituality, you're not looking at your whole self. So it can be spirituality, as in we're all connected to something, I don't know what, or spirituality in I belong on the earth with the oceans and the leaves. For me, I enjoy not bringing religion in and cultivating spirituality and connectedness. And I don't care
Yeah.
how it presents, but if you don't have some sense of that, even as an atheist, even as an agnostic, even at, it's not a religious belief. It is where do you fit in the puzzle of life, even if it's a very scientific belonging. If you don't have that connectedness, it's just life in general is hard and healing is almost impossible. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's been my experience with that. So, like, I'm not shy about talking about faith in that sense of spirit,
Mm-hmm.
sense of resilience, sense of like you
Mm-hmm.
are okay now and you
Yeah.
will be okay. Even when you are sitting in the midst of a shitstorm, you are okay. It is okay.
Yeah.
It is very
And it's
painful,
okay to sit
uncomfortable.
and
You don't like
it's
it.
okay. Yeah. And it's okay to be angry and
Yeah.
it's okay to be frustrated and it's okay to, I mean, I have a blog on my website, meeting Jesus in the Walmart parking lot because, oh my gosh, I just went and did that, always striving for excellence, people pleasing, perfectionism, and had to do it just the way that every, religion told me how to do it. And I found myself in the parking lot trying to get printer paper, beating on the steering wheel, cussing, literally cussing at God,
Yeah.
cussing. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I thought, oh, I am going straight down there. I'm like, wow, I'm like, whoo, talk about something bad. But you know what, Amy? I just a big sense of peace that came on me. I was like, okay, now we can talk. Now things can be real. And the truth is, like you said,
No.
sorry, I'm going to move while we say this, but the truth of the matter with all this is that you can, you're here for a reason. We're all here.
Mm.
Your DNA is unique to no one else here. There is, regardless of what you believe in your belief practices, you're here. And what are you going to do with your here?
Mm.
And I kept finding myself like I'm always trying to, I don't know, justify my here. And like you
Oh.
said with those accessories, I love that. I'm going to use that. And it's interesting you said that because this week, this kind of came over me, and it was, where you're saying accessorizing and you're holding on to this stuff, and somebody said, "Oh, Tracey, you're always going out for excellence." And immediately when someone said that, I took that as a bad thing, right? Because I was like,
Mhm.
I'm always striving, always want to be the best at the job that I do, with the mom that I am, at the not in comparison to others, but truly not, but just always striving to be the best at
Yep.
everything. And my first inclination was like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible human being. There's
Mm.
that perfectionist coming from my past. And for a split minute, it was like, but wait a second, that is who you are. Is that really a bad thing that you want to give it your all to the people
Yeah.
you love and the things that you do?
Yeah.
I think sometimes we want like those great, big, beautiful earrings that you said, like, yeah, we accessorize them. The problem is if we hold on to them as our identity,
Yes.
that's a problem.
Yes.
But by goodness,
Yeah.
if you want to do the best in your life and you're striving at it, that's a good thing.
Yeah. That's a
And
choosing.
there's,
That's a choosing. You can choose to, this is just so perfect, by the way, because the conversation, I've got, I don't know, a handful of people in this women's coaching group, and I got 2 calls the day of the meeting. And one of them was, I can't remember what we talked about last time, and I feel unprepared, and I want to make sure that I am like up to speed. Great. I can really appreciate that. The second one was, I'm not sure I can be in the group right now. I just started a new job, and I don't think I can give 110% to the new job and 110% to like, where do we see that pattern where project comes in, I want to give it my all, so I'll just ditch my self-care for a while, right? And so I was able to say to the entire group, okay, who here is an overachiever and not feeling like they can give it 110%, and therefore they're either failing or they need to stop. And everybody was like, "Meh." I'm like, great, this is a new muscle. This is a new muscle to build. It's called show up. It does not matter if you've done 110%. It does not matter if you've done 10%. You're going to show up, and you're going to build this muscle of, I don't have to overperform on everything. I can choose to overperform, but I don't have to. I can take that earring off, and I am still okay, and I am still a contribution to this group just by showing up.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's such a lovely time to establish, no, you're perfect and you're contributing because you are here. And that's all you have to do. Just be here.
Absolutely. And I think, Amy, I think that's beautiful that you share that with the group too, because I think, again, with that, I guess I would say epiphany of seeing, right, that it's not a bad thing to want to achieve and overachieve, was also, there's a clinch in there. And like I said, it's where is that balance? Just like you mentioned, right? Where's that balance? And something happened, I think, right when I had that epiphany that night I was going to bed. And I heard the self-talk, like, oh my gosh, you didn't do this today, you didn't get this done, you didn't get this done. It was probably Sunday night. And I was going through all the negatives of what I hadn't done, the overachiever, right? Like, oh my gosh, you didn't accomplish in 24 hours what would take anybody, a year. But sure, let's get down on yourself. And then I stopped and I was like, okay, let's rewire this a minute. What did you do today?
Yeah.
And when I stopped and thought about what I did, I was like, you did do a lot today. We forget to say that. And I think as overachievers, we will get blessing out of the way we were created. And even if it had to do with something that happened in our past and that drove it even more, but who we are, and if we're striving and we're people pleasing and we're perfectionism, not all of that is wrong. You need these people in this world, trust me.
Yeah, you need to be able to connect to people, and what we learn when we're teeny tiny, and we learn, if I'm pleasant, people will engage with me. That's not a bad life lesson. It just has to be balanced with, I can have a bad day too and be true to my bad day, and no one is going to peace out of my life. And if they do, I'm still all right.
Right. And I can still like me, right? If they don't like me, I can still be okay and still be me and still be a good person and still like myself, even if they don't. And that's hard. That's really hard. But I'm working on that one. But yeah, we're all really, really good. We just don't allow ourselves to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we measure it. It's the way, I think you said it at first, our societies aren't set up to encourage reporting. Our societies aren't set up to encourage self-worth. I sat on my couch this morning, and the dogs were on the beds, and one of the cats was, of course, climbing on me, and the other one was looking at me, wanting to climb on me. And, I'm just like, guys, I'm just trying to have a cup of coffee. But I sat there and I was like, what do I need to do right now? And the answer was no, just sit. And I just sat right there and petted the more dominant cat, because she kept the other cat off, and had my coffee. And that's enough.
Right.
That's enough.
Well, I think you put it very perfectly. striving for excellence, striving to be your best is great.
Mm.
And you know you're in check and in balance if you can still feel in the present and appreciate it.
Mm.
Then you know you're balanced out, right?
Well, for the moment,
That
I
you're
was balanced out for that 10 minutes while I was
for that moment,
uncaffeinated.
yes.
And then as soon as I caffeinated, I was like, all right, boom, let's go.
But you know, too, the world needs people who are driven to
Yeah.
get things done.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's fine. But we're always trying to talk ourselves down,
Yeah.
like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then, you meet, and I'm sure you have too, friends who have like just that great piece about them, right?
Mhm.
And they don't have to feel like they have to drive and succeed, and they can enjoy, life, sitting, drinking their cup of coffee with their dogs and their cat, and not feel like they have to do so much more, right? And that there's such a beauty in that too.
Oh, girl,
And
there
then
it is.
and someone will ask, this happened, like, what are you doing? And I'm a guardian ad litem. So I was doing that. Oh, I should do something like that. I'm like, I'm not doing that for you to feel like you have to do that. No.
Yeah.
I'm doing that because I'm a little crazy and I like to get my hands in things, and that's my calling and my purpose. Yours might be that gentle soul that I can come to when my world is absolutely gone crazy and I need to sit still.
Mm. Well, I will sit still with you anytime, Tracey. I'm just right over there on the couch. The door's usually unlocked. Bring your own cup or choose one of mine, whichever one.
And my 2 dogs.
Yes, bring it. Bring it.
I would love it, Amy. I would love it. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And we should just announce that you are starting your own podcast coming soon.
Coming soon. Hopefully recording Friday to hope the plan is to go live on April 1st in recognition of Prevent Child Abuse Month. So
thank you for
April is that
stuff. It's really, when you were talking about particularly policies and whatnot, I thought to myself, oh, thank God she's doing that, because I hate that.
I do too. I don't know who I'm going to
I'm not good at it. I want to throw a throat punch. I want to give up. I don't have the persistence in that. And I'm so glad that you do, and I appreciate the work you're doing. And I appreciate having another partner in, this is the truth. This is my truth, because I say it's my truth. And I'm not justifying, and I'm not convincing, and I'm not selling you on it. I'm here.
And I'm not going to be silenced, and I'm not going to be shamed. It happened, and let's work on getting me moving forward. And so I can live my best life.
I'm ready to heal.
Yep.
For sure. Okay. Well, guys, I will put everything you'll need to know in the show notes. And if you're struggling, you are not alone. And there is another side. You're going to get there. Just keep connecting. Give yourself some grace on the days that you don't feel like doing the work.
And just please know you're precious, honored, and loved no matter what the world says, no matter what happened to you. You're amazing just the way you are, because you're here.
Just the way you are. All right, guys, we'll see you next time on Healthy AF. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Healthy AF podcast. I hope that it has helped you create a new possibility for your health and sets you into action to go get it. If you want more information, or if you want to connect with me, visit my website at myhealthylife.coach. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that each new Healthy AF episode will be sent directly to you. Let's take you from where you are to where you want to go.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.